Hi guys, Nathan here, and today I'm taking a look at Fallout 4 and whether or not it's any good. Now, I'm about 16 hours into the game, which would usually be enough for a full review, but not with this game, so these are just going to be my fairly in-depth first impressions. So let's start with the obvious things, and the first thing to say is that the game is pretty damn good looking. It's certainly not the most beautiful game I've ever seen. I mean, it's not up to the standards of games like The Witcher 3 or even the new Star Wars Battlefront, but it is certainly a significant step up from the graphics of Fallout 3 and New Vegas, which is very much appreciated. The green and brown drab feel from previous Fallout games has been scrapped in favour of a much more vibrant world, at least to the extent that a post-apocalyptic game would allow. Despite graphical improvements though, there are some issues, with one of the most notable being the extremely poor lip sync in some conversations. I feel as though this wouldn't have been such a big issue, but Bethesda decided to show cinematic camera angles during conversations, which allows the player to closely observe whoever they're talking to. Whilst this is not a huge issue, it can be a bit of an immersion breaker, and in a world which is otherwise incredibly immersive, it's a bit of a disappointment. Another slight issue is that a few of the textures around the world are pretty low res, but I think I can probably forgive this as it is an open world game with a lot to render, so some optimization is necessary. Overall, the graphics are solid at the very least, and do a very good job of making the world feel real and alive. Alongside the large graphical improvement, Fallout 4 adds a new crafting and building system that is almost worthy of being a game in itself. You can seriously sink in several hours building your perfect home base, and then get to like 2 o'clock in the morning and realise that you haven't actually done any of the quests. Believe me on that one, I'm speaking from experience. My only small gripe with the system as it stands is the amount of scrapping that you have to do in order to gather materials to build. I think it would be nice if some of the people that live in your settlements would gather these resources for you. But then again, maybe I'm just not far enough through the game yet, and there is a system like this in place later in the game, although I somehow doubt it. This though barely scratches the surface of the potential that the crafting system has, and I would be very surprised if we didn't see additions to the system in future patches or DLC, as there are so many fun and useful things that could be added in for you to build and add to your settlement. Moving on to the gameplay, and I really have to give it to Bethesda here, that on the whole they have created a very satisfying first-person shooter system. Now, I realise that this isn't really the genre of the game, but once you get into a confrontation, the game effectively becomes an FPS in my opinion, and a pretty good one at that. Guns feel good to shoot, have a decent amount of recoil, and there is a massive amount of weapon variety, which helps keep things fresh after tens of hours of playtime. On PC though, there is an issue with mouse smoothing, which is fairly detrimental to shooting and has to go down as a black mark against the game. It's certainly not the worst level of mouse smoothing I've ever come across, and it can be moved via changing the INI files or by adding certain mods. However, I feel that this isn't a step that a player should have to take after purchasing a full price game. One of my other concerns about the gameplay initially was that the main character is voiced, which is a move away from the old Fallout games and takes away slightly from the immersion of the game. But I think I've reached a stage where I don't really mind this as much as I did initially, as the game still allows you to play the character as either a hero of the people or a scum of the earth villain. As for storyline and quests, I don't want to give away any spoilers for the story, but I will say that I have found it to be a fairly engaging main quest line. However, I generally get sidetracked by the side quests, which have the potential to develop into full-fledged stories on their own. And while a few of them become very repetitive extremely quickly, such as the Minutemen questline, which turns into a raider killing simulator, most offer a good amount of variety to the game and are a very enjoyable time sink. Honestly, some of the side quests are so strong in their own right that I imagine there will be some people who play the game for 100 hours without completing the main storyline. After all of these positives and me waxing lyrical about the game though, we have to come to a fairly major negative point, which is performance. Now, I've been playing on PC on a GTX 970, and in general my frame rates are decent at high to ultra settings, sitting between 70 and 90 FPS. But when I move into certain areas of the map, the frame rate can just totally tank to below 30 frames per second at times, which to me is totally unacceptable. There has in fact been a couple of occasions where the game completely froze and sat at 0 frames per second, and by the time the frame rate went back up, my character had been killed and there was nothing I could do. These problems are apparently even worse on consoles, even though the game is locked to 30 FPS by default, with many experiencing frame rates in the single figures on a regular basis. Now, in my opinion, the game cannot be given perfect scores, as some review outlets have been giving it, because it doesn't matter how brilliant the game is if you can't run it at a decent level. Hopefully this can be fixed by patches or even by the modding community, which has got to work very quickly on the PC side, but realistically they shouldn't have to fix the game for the developers, and Bethesda have to be marked down for these performance issues. But talking of the modding community, one great thing Bethesda have said is that mods will become available on consoles as well as PC, which could really lengthen the lifespan of the game and could create many exciting new ways for the game to remain fresh. Also, if you want to see a bunch of naked ladies, of course they've already made that mod, so you can already do that. One final quick point I wanted to address in this video is the size of the world. Now, a lot of people were worried about the map being too small, quoting that you could get from one side to the other in 11 minutes. And while that may be the case, the world is so densely packed with so many things to do that for me this is not an issue at all. I think on this occasion a quality over quantity mindset should be taken, and the world is definitely high quality. So having spoken about all the things within the game that I really wanted to cover in this video, it's time to come to the conclusion. Fallout 4 is a fantastic game, with hundreds of hours of exploration, loot collecting, and monster smashing fun to be had. The world is beautiful and densely packed, and you'll never have a lack of things to do. The new crafting system could be a game all on its own and really adds a new element to the franchise, which I feel helps to move the game forward from older Fallout games. Having said all that though, the real question is, should you buy it? The short answer is yes. The long answer though is yes if you have powerful enough hardware to run it no matter what is happening on the screen. Now, I've already said in the video that I've been running the game on a 970 and it has largely been acceptable. So if you've got that level of hardware or higher, you should be fine. Anything too much lower than that though and you might start to struggle. If you are operating on worse hardware than that, I would recommend waiting for the game to be fixed before picking up your copy. As for console users, while I haven't personally played the game on console, I've heard enough about the issues that the game is having on Xbox One and PS4 to say you too are probably best to wait until the game has been fixed. So my final verdict is that I love the game, but it's definitely not without its issues. And that's about it for today, guys. So if you enjoyed the video, I'd be very appreciative if you'd leave a like below the video, comment telling me what you think of the game, or even subscribe to the channel for more first impressions and reviews coming soon. Anyway, I've been Nathan, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.